The Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum was launched to inform, inspire, motivate diverse talent to join the energy workforce by intentional recognition of current female energy leaders who contribute to growing Florida's economy and the purposeful sharing of their professional journeys. We are creating opportunity. Join me each week as we meet new leaders in energy and listen to their important roles in an industry that is vital to the country's future. Welcome. Today we're discussing all things public engagement in the transmission of electricity. This is different for us. Welcome, viewers and listeners. We're so glad you're with us. And today I've got the pleasure of having Miranda Burrows, Sophia O'Keefe, and Kacie Fore with us. So, Sophia, help us get started. Let's do some simple introductions and describe each of your roles with Duke Energy.
Yes, I will be glad to get started. And thank you so much, Lila, for having us today, me and my two amazing peers. So I'm Sophia O'Keefe. As you mentioned, I'm the Director of Public Engagement for Transmission. So in our roles, we work with the public on all of our projects across all 6 states within Duke Energy. So we are doing quite a bit of infrastructure investment in all of our states. So that includes Florida, North and South Carolina, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. And so what that looks like is if we're building a new line or a new substation, or even rebuilding a line, rebuilding a substation, those are all can be very invasive projects to the public. So we work with the public to explain why are we even doing the project? What's the need for the project? Be very transparent about what's going to be involved in the effort, and also get input. How can we reduce the impacts? So that's at a high level what we do. I lead a great team. Two of our folks are here, Miranda and Kacie, but our team is located in all the states and supports all the transmission projects within those states. And as I mentioned, we are doing record-breaking transmission work today in 2021. Every year we are breaking new records as far as the infrastructure investment that we're doing in our states. And a lot of it has to do with getting to net zero by 2050. In order to support all the renewables, moving to net carbon zero by 2050, we have to make sure the transmission infrastructure is built to support that. That means, we're interconnecting the renewables, that we're strengthening the grid in order to prepare ourselves for that big goal that we have out there.
Everything you just said is such a critical part of the conversation. We're going to drill down on all of those elements in just a minute, because we want to make sure the viewers fully appreciate every component of what you described in terms of the purpose of that sort of infrastructure development in just a minute. Kacie, introduce yourself and what your particular role is in this dynamic group here.
Thanks, Lila. Like Sophia said, we're all very excited to be here with you today, so thank you. Again, my name is Kacie Fore. I work for Duke Energy in North Carolina. I'm a senior transmission engagement specialist. So similar to what Sophia mentioned, I have the responsibility of proactively reaching out to the public regarding transmission line projects, substation projects, sometimes vegetation management projects. I love a lot about my job, but I will say that two of my favorite things are being able to directly talk with customers and interact with customers that we serve. That's really important. But the other thing I really like is that we are with the project from inception to completion. We get to see the whole process, and I really, really like that. So I'll stop there, let Miranda go, but those are two of my favorite parts.
Thank you, Kacie.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for having us. My name is Miranda Burrows, and I'm in the Florida office. So I'm in Lake Mary, which is Central Florida. And I have a similar role to Kacie.
My hometown, Miranda.
All right. Which one? Where? Lake Mary?
So I grew up in Sanford. Yeah, my sister lives in Miranda. Say hi, Lila, sister, because she will.
Hi, Lila, sister. That's what a small world. So I'm also born and raised in Florida, in Deltona, so not too far from you. And so Kacie and I have similar roles. We both report to Sophia. She's our fearless leader in this team. I cover 7 counties for Central Florida. Again, very similar role to Kacie.
That's amazing. Immediately, Sophia, before we get into the substantive part of this conversation, I'm speaking to 3 women in the transmission section of Duke Energy. Yes, it's public engagement, but you are housed in the transmission section of the company. And I think, remember, our purpose here with the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum is to inform, inspire, and motivate, and to really highlight the diversity of careers and workforce capabilities in the energy industry. And so, in all candor, I personally, as much as we think we know about the industry, I personally was surprised to find that it's 3 women, right? So,
Yes.
And hopefully there's a lot of lesson in that for people looking for careers.
I will tell you, our whole group, and as you delve kind of into our backgrounds even more, our backgrounds are, none of us are engineers.
Mm-hmm.
None of us have a technical background. However, we've got a very diverse group. Our whole group is diverse. And like you said, we are in the transmission department. And we have found that that's a best practice, is embedding a group like ours in with the project teams, because we have learned the project processes very well. The project managers, we're very close with them, as opposed to being separated like in a centralized group, as some companies do it. But I mentioned, none of us have a technical background. I came into the organization in community relations. I have an undergrad in marketing and an MBA. And Kacie has a different background as well. And then Miranda, Kacie was in IT and in community relations before that. Miranda has been with the city, with nonprofits prior to coming to Duke Energy. So we all have very diverse backgrounds, but non-technical. And that is something we'll probably get into later, is you can be very successful in our industry and not have a technical background. We know who to call and who to ask.
Right.
Well, when those technical
right.
What is the saying? I know just enough to be dangerous, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
Because obviously when you're speaking
That's right.
within the community, you have to have some substantive experience or a subject matter expert with you, I have to believe, to maintain the credibility with the community. But so much of success in what you do has to do with strong communication skills, I would suspect.
Absolutely. And I would say what we do, and I think Kacie and Miranda feel the same way, is we translate a lot of times what is very technical information into a simple and easy to understand, the way we would all like to hear it. Because to a lot of people, our industry is a mystery. Folks really don't know what happens when they flip the switch. So we really, I think all of us one of our favorite parts of the job is to translate to the public and to our elected officials and to folks that they don't really have time to get into the details of our industry, but they really need to know enough about what is happening to be able to speak to it themselves in a lot of cases. So I really enjoy that. And I enjoy making it simple for folks and building that trust and transparency with the public, with our elected officials, our regulatory agencies, in what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And I think in a way,
go ahead, Miranda.
I think in a way it's kind of, okay not to have that technical background, because I have to be able to understand it, right? So I need my internal team to explain it in a way that I can understand it, and then I can explain that to the public. Right. And so sometimes, you'll talk to folks and they'll give this long explanation with all these details. Like, okay, and that's really great. And then you'll give one bullet point. So did I hear that this is the takeaway? Right. So I think that's kind of helpful, right? Because we have to be able to understand it and then explain it.
Well, and and
it's right. And we really have to meet our customers and the property owners and stakeholders where they are at.
Right. Well, and Kacie, that's where I was going exactly, Kacie, which is probably also you're helping to translate internally, Kacie, to some of your engineers and the folks in the transmission section.
That's right. The translation goes both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And for our viewers and listeners, we don't want you to think we're interrupting each other. There's just a slight delay in the transmission of this audio. So. All right, Sophia, let's go back to the substantive conversation that you started with in the introduction. This is your group is a testament to the recognition that public engagement is a critical component to the success of new transmission maintenance, infrastructure development generally within the community, right? And I'm sure it wasn't always done this way. This is very effective in helping the community to buy into appropriately the need for infrastructure development. I have to believe much of what you do has to do, the success of it at least, has to do with your ability to create relationships within the community. Mm-hmm. Am I right about that? I mean, you don't just show up to meet someone the first time you need to do something related to transmission.
Absolutely. So when we work very closely, I would say, with a lot of our other internal groups like government and community relations, our large business group, and folks that have other touch points within the community. So, but yeah, you're exactly right. Years ago, we recognized in transmission and within Duke Energy that the stakeholder engagement that we do on projects, that's critical to help, the public understand, why are we doing this? They can be very invasive projects, building a new line in a community. It can be very, folks are wondering, why do you have to build this here? Why not somewhere else? So being able to build that support also in the community, it's been really important to not just be transparent with what we're doing and why we're doing it, but building the support so that everyone is understanding from the beginning, not just when we start construction, but from the beginning. How did we even develop the process? How did we site this line in this neighborhood or through this community? Making sure that we're getting input, and we can talk about that in more detail, but siting, I'm personally involved in every siting project that we do on every transmission project in every state. So and Kacie and Miranda are as well in their areas. Folks would probably be very surprised to know that we grill each other to make sure that we are siting our projects well and that we are minimizing the impacts as much as possible. So we recognized years ago that these are very large projects. They're up above ground. Folks are going to be our neighbors forever. If your home is near our project or your business, you're going to be our neighbor forever. We will be each other's neighbor forever. So it's very important that we're working closely together and that we are good neighbors and that we are working very closely with our neighbors around our projects to just make sure that they know Duke Energy, know that we are going to minimize the impacts as much as possible. And a lot of times we can anticipate the impacts, but honestly, we learn a lot from that feedback that sometimes we don't anticipate things that our elected officials or the public will share with us, and we'll say, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Or that we become aware of, say, road projects or other things that would impact our project that we have to, we in our company, we have to coordinate with a lot of different organizations that are around us, all of our communities. So it's very important that we build that engagement and that we gain support for our projects, because it doesn't help if we're building them and folks don't know why we're building them and don't know how it's benefiting them. Honestly, the big thing we try to focus on is the benefits and how it's going to help the community, how it's going to help folks at their residence or their business, and how it will help the community, not just for now, but in the long run. And just one other quick point is we have growing areas. I mean, look all around us. Florida is growing tremendously. All of our service territory is growing. So as we have growth, that also generates projects, that we have to build the infrastructure to support the growth. So it's very exciting. You can tell. That we're very excited.
Hear the passion. I really, it's so wonderful to see, what I always describe as the fire in the belly for what you do. And hopefully that again is a lesson for a college student or another professional looking to enter into the career, into the energy career. No two projects are the same, I'm sure, Sophia.
Exactly.
You're meeting a lot of people, you're engaging with local government, with the community, with associations. And so if you're a people person, it's a great opportunity for you.
Yes.
And Miranda and Kacie, we have our first question from an audience member. And the question is it common to change routes or decisions for construction, it looks like. Development is what the audience member says, based on feedback you've gotten from the community.
It is. And I think, I've been with the company a little over 3 years, and it is so amazing just to kind of see our whole siting and routing process for new projects. And, for new lines, we conduct an open house, we have surveys, and we encourage people to send comments in. And we look at every comment. We consider so much external information to make our decisions. I mean, I have been so impressed with this team. And it's funny because I used to work for a city, and we're actually doing a new transmission line in that city. And I worked for the city prior, and now here I am at Duke Energy. And just to be able to know the time and energy that Duke spent into really siting that line and routing that line in the right place, and all the feedback we've taken into account. So absolutely we do.
It's wonderful. And Kacie, when we talk about engaging with the public, it's not just, I assume, I don't know this for a fact, it's not just you're putting notices out or mailers. I'm guessing there are different modes of communication depending on who you're speaking with at any given point. Do you want to elaborate on that a bit for me?
Sure. We use all types of different communications. We do, notify by mail. We do mail things, but Miranda touched some, I think Sophia too, on open houses. We bring people in. Now, the pandemic has changed that slightly. We're trying to do that in a safe way, but we still do that virtually now. We are making phone calls. We are meeting face to face. It all kind of depends on the project and what it calls for. And we're able to kind of do that on the fly, make a good decision about it. I guess some of that's on the fly, but some of that is very much planned in our communication plans as well, or how we're going to attack or how we're going to approach a customer, how we're going to educate them. But I would say we use just about every method of communication that you can imagine. Everything we have access to, we're going to give it a try. So.
Hey, Kacie, I'll just add to what Kacie just said. So Kacie actually on her project, she was the first one to do a virtual open house on her project. So last year with the pandemic, we had to quickly pivot. Our projects didn't go away. We just had to change how we communicated with the public. So Kacie was the first person in our team, and now we're doing it on every project, and we'll probably do it in the future, even when the pandemic is gone, or where we can actually bring people together, because the virtual tools have been so successful. But Kacie did a virtual open house where from the comfort of your own home, you can get on your laptop and see the project and provide comments. We also did live WebEx meetings where folks can put in the chat, provide their comments through that aspect. But the other thing we have found, there are a lot of folks, believe it or not, that don't have good internet access or even internet access.
Sadly,
so
that's true, yeah.
Yeah, we've had to look at one-on-one, very low-tech ways to reach folks, but lots of high-tech ways, videos. We've done animated videos. We've done lots of different things this last year that's kind of the silver lining of the pandemic, and things that we will probably continue into the future. But as Kacie said, every project's different. And you mentioned that, Lila, every project is different. So for those folks looking to get into the industry or wondering about the industry, it is very dynamic. Every day is a challenge. Every project is different and unique. And it's really exciting, honestly, to come up with a plan for every project.
I'll tell you, Sophia, as I was preparing for this interview this week, I ran across a video that you all had produced. It was on the Duke website, and I actually shared it on the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum Facebook page. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, please visit our Facebook page and spend just the 5 minutes going through the video. I think it's the animated video you're talking about. It was so well done.
Probably.
What I really appreciated about it, and I want to bring this back to the three of you, what I really appreciated about that video is the analogy to the superhighway and how transition. Yeah, I got it. I got the memo.
Miranda.
Miranda
made that video. Miranda made that video.
Honestly, without you guys, I found it. I really liked it, and I shared it because it was talking about the level of communication, right? It was easy to follow. Immediately you get the analogy, and then there's a visual in your mind before you see the visual in the video of, how the transmission lines are connecting generation to distribution to the end use customer, right? And congratulations to you, Miranda, because it was worthy of an Emmy. There you go.
Why, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta give a shout out to we have an amazing, it was a team effort. We have an amazing, we call them the ABC team, advertising, branding, and creative design. Amazing. And that was a huge team effort. And that was another great example of tons of conversations with subject matter experts and just team conversations, and then going, you know what? I think this is a good way to explain this externally. So thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. So Sophia, this brings us back to the point you were making on the expanding into renewables and wanting a clean portfolio, by 2030. Explain to our viewers why transmission development has anything to do with clean energy goals.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll give you an example in Florida, where we're building a lot of new solar plants in Florida. In order to connect those new solar plants to the grid, you have to have a transmission line to make that connection. So that's one way right here in Florida, where transmission is a key part of that. Not only do you have to connect that infrastructure to the grid within the state, but you also have to, in some ways, anticipate where are the future solar plants going to be, and do we have enough infrastructure in those areas to be able to support the new infrastructure that's coming in. So I'll give you an example. So new solar facilities tend to go into where we have a lot of land in the state. Well, where can you get a lot of land? A lot of times they're not very populated areas. Well, that means we may not have a lot of transmission infrastructure in those areas. So that may be a good example as to why we may have to strengthen the transmission in that area just to support the new facilities that are coming, not just to do the interconnect, but also for future projects that we have to anticipate what's coming down the road, maybe 10, 20 years down the road, not just utility scale solar, but what about the private developers that are building? We face that, and especially in the Carolinas, is a lot of private development of solar facilities where Duke Energy, folks are coming to us wanting us to interconnect those facilities. In the future, we may have wind power that we have to connect to. That would be very new and different for Duke Energy in some of our states. As we retire generation, so I always tell folks, transmission is the hub of everything that happens in our world. So as we retire generation, that also triggers transmission reconfiguration of the system. When you're retiring maybe coal plants, or as we're retiring other facilities, you have to reconfigure the system. And we're having a lot of retirements and then bringing, new renewable generation on board. That triggers a lot of transmission projects and infrastructure. So transmission is kind of in the middle of any, all the major efforts that are taking place in the industry, and in not just in our company, in the whole industry.
Right.
This is not just unique to Duke Energy.
Right. And in fact, there's shared transmission amongst the companies, right? And I think that's another thing our viewers, it's just not intuitive. If you're not involved in this industry, you don't know the amount of collaboration and communication that happens among the utilities as it relates to the entire grid. And
exactly.
And I'll tell you, because you're the first group I'm interviewing after the Texas weatherization issues. Let's go ahead and talk about that. What are some of the things, not to be critical of them. I mean, I think everyone's going to be talking about what happened there for years to come, but as it relates to what we do in transmission and in planning in Florida, where might those differences be so that the Florida customer takes comfort that it's not likely, that we're not likely to ever experience what Texas experienced the last 2 weeks?
You're exactly right, Lila.
Well,
so
I think Texas seemed to primarily be
No, go ahead, Kacie.
I was just going to say that that Texas was primarily a generation issue as opposed to what we typically see of damage to our distribution or transmission systems. But I feel like it's raised a lot of questions, probably across the country in every utility. You know, what do we need to be thinking about proactively, especially when it comes to things like extreme weather, because, you know, we can't control what Mother Nature does. We can just be prepared for it.
Right. And Miranda and Sophia, I want to pitch this back to you in a little bit of a different fashion, which is, you know, I think Florida has a planning process and a storm hardening process that some states haven't quite embraced or been as responsible with. How does that policy here in Florida impact your work, Sophia?
Well, the storm protection plan was just approved recently. That's a 10-year plan to harden the system. For us, what that looks like for this year is a lot of pole replacements on transmission. So we're going to be replacing, and we have been for many years, but this year it's a significant number of poles from wood structures to steel. And what we have found in the past is the storms that we've had, you know, you don't see a lot of steel structures on the ground unless there's a tornado. Now, tornadoes don't discriminate whether it's a wood structure or steel, but the SPP, the Storm Protection Plan, as we call it in Florida, that's going to be a great effort for the next 10 years, not just for Duke Energy, but for all the utilities in Florida to harden their system against future storms. Last year, I forget how many we had, 30 plus storms. And that will probably continue, into the future. So as much as we can strengthen the system from the lines to the substations. The other thing, what I'm hoping, from a silver lining out of Texas is that I think folks are appreciating the infrastructure, a lot more than they may have a couple of weeks ago. Yep. And so that when we do come to folks with our projects, that there might be more accepting, of the projects. I know a lot of times we focus on the aesthetics and, I don't want this in my community or my neighborhood, but that hopefully folks in the future will be much more accepting that this infrastructure is really important to, electricity runs a lot in our lives. When that, we saw what happened in Texas, when that doesn't go well, it impacts a lot of different areas of our lives. So we take that very seriously.
It diffuses the NIMBY argument, not in my backyard argument a bit, doesn't it? Miranda, so let's come back to that video.
But I think it's also
No, please, Kacie, go ahead. Please.
I was just, sorry, I know this delay is driving us all crazy. I was just going to say that I think Texas is a reminder of how intertwined overall the grid improvement is. Mm-hmm. And it's not just a transmission or distribution or generation thing. It takes all three working together to be able to deliver a reliable service to our customers. So I think the challenge is, doing that, but also making our customers aware that when these things happen, although they can be inconvenient sometimes, they are very important to what we become accustomed to as far as reliable power.
Right.
And you hit right on exactly
what good is the highway without state-of-the-art highway without the car, right, Miranda?
Mm-hmm. There you go. And you hit on exactly what I was going to say too, just about providing the information early and providing, the public with the why and the bigger picture. And I think one thing that I've changed just in the last month or two is just even my messaging, right? So when we talk about a project, we'll talk about this line in this neighborhood, in this city, in this county. And now we're zooming out even farther and we're saying, Florida and the grid and the East Coast. And so we're even zooming out when we're giving information, just exactly like what Kacie was saying.
So in the video, Miranda, there was a few minutes appropriately devoted to safety and making the point, and making the point that people never want to touch the transmission lines, and certainly not an open line. But with that said, the company is responsible for vegetation management around those lines. Can you explain what that responsibility is and what exactly you do? And frankly, anything the customer should do.
Absolutely. So depending upon the voltage of the line, the location of the line, the structure types, there's a certain distance clearance, if you will, from each of the lines that we have to maintain vegetation from. And it is very important to the system. You know, when I started, I'll just remember my first couple of field reviews, and it's like, you have to cut what, you have to trim what. But now that I sort of am entrenched in the system and reliability, it's got to be clear. I mean, it is so important for our reliability. So we want to make sure that we're informing the public, you know, of our plans and what we're doing and when and why, but it is top priority.
And I'll just add to that.
Yeah, please, Sophia.
Lila, I was just going to add.
Go ahead.
We started a program years ago about informing the public about what to plant before they actually plant. So that way we don't have to come behind them and remove a palm tree, a beautiful palm tree that was expensive, or other large trees and mature trees that, that we will need to impact. We try to catch it before it actually gets planted and working with our cities and our communities, but we can't always catch it. And folks sometimes, just they want to actually screen themselves, maybe from their neighbors or maybe from the facility. So they think, oh, this is a good thing. I'm planting this berm or this tree. And then we have to come and tell them, well, it's actually, within, what the last thing anyone wants is to have a tree, what we call a tree grow in, or a tree to fall into the corridor and impact the transmission system. And then the good thing is, unlike the distribution system, which are shorter poles, typically, a lot of vegetation can grow to the height of a distribution. Transmission tends to be a lot taller, so you can have a lot of vegetation around the facilities that end up being okay and folks can keep, but they tend to be low growing species and low growing vegetation, and not tall and mature like an oak tree, for example.
Yeah. So, Kacie, let me come to you. Rightly so, there's been a lot of attention drawn to environmental justice, and maybe that some of that is because many of our companies are looking at what ESG means for them, environmental, social governance, what it means in terms of the corporate profile. How has Duke, your section in particular, accounted for the environmental sustainability, environmental justice conversation in your planning?
Well, I think it's important that we provide improvements and high quality of service to every community we serve, right? It doesn't matter if it's low income, affluent, does not matter at all. I think being aware that perceptions about our work may be different in different communities, and recognizing that needs might be different to help us and be more responsive to customers as we serve them locally. But I think just kind of really giving some thought. And I think that's one thing I'd want every customer to know, that no matter where you live, what your zip code is, we are doing the same process either way. It's important to us either way. We care a lot about the community. We care about the impact to your community specifically. So I think that's how I would lead that question.
Mm-hmm. And Lila, I can add just real quick to that one. So I actually happen to be on the team that's developing our environmental justice principles for Duke Energy. And just to give you a preview, we haven't announced them to the public yet, but a lot of it has to do with public engagement and how we engage the public and how we site our infrastructure. And so for the transmission team, like Kacie said, I do feel like we do a great job of really involving everyone around us, even making sure that things are translated in different languages. That communities that we're not hearing from, we're making it a point to reach out to them. It's not that, well, we're not hearing from them. A lot of times we're not hearing from them because folks are busy working, or they might be juggling a lot of different things in their lives. So I feel like we do a great job, but you'll see in the future, we're in transmission, we're going to be formalizing, documenting more of a process around environmental justice. And, things that we can do to have meaningful involvement from all of our communities, even if we're not hearing from them, just formalizing what we do a little bit more. But I happen to be on that team. I'm really excited. We'll probably roll that out this year to the public, the official Duke Energy environmental justice principles. And I'm really excited about it. And
so you've given us a sneak peek, but now you have to come back, which is breaking news, guys. But now you have to come back. That's right, I know. But now you have to come back, like real breaking news. Breaking, yeah. But now you have to come back and announce all of those principles here, Sophia. So you've got to give me your word to do that.
I could do it right now, but I'd probably get in trouble if
not trying to give you. Yeah,
I gave you a little hint, and I will tell you, I've looked closely at what other utilities are doing as well, especially in the transmission space, and it's really exciting, honestly, that we're focusing. And like Kacie said, it shouldn't matter, what type of neighborhood is around us. Like we do the same thing with aesthetics. Is it a high traffic, high visibility location? Absolutely. We need to be looking at what can we do to work with our neighbor around us and blend in to the community, no matter what, what's around us.
And I was just going to add, one of the most successful kind of ways I've sort of adapted to different projects, and a lot of it's grassroots, right? So it's like you meet with the counties, you meet with the cities, you meet with the HOAs. Hey, is there a community leader? Is there somebody here that I could talk to? And it's like, you're slowly getting that information, and then you're reaching out to them and like, hey, can you help me share this information? And so it's all different. And so we really do try to spend a lot of time in how can we get this information out to these folks? And sometimes it's different depending upon the project.
Mm-hmm. We're getting a lot of feedback from the audience about being excited to hear you talk about environmental justice and looking out for the environmental justice principles, Sophia, Miranda, and Kacie. What I hear all three of you say, though, really what you're describing, it's not that I can't imagine you haven't had all of this in mind as you move forward. It's just we are finally articulating it as what it is. But I also think we've become more transparent about it. So what I hear the three of you talk about is transparency. So Sophia, when you say in front of me, we're formalizing our principles, that says to me, and we will be releasing it, so there's some transparency and opportunity for the public to see it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It'll be probably a big splash when we do release it. And then each department right now is working on how do we operationalize, how do we get behind all of these principles and operationalize what the principles say. So each department is now building it into their processes.
Yeah. All right, ladies, you ready for this section? This is the part where we get a little personal. Don't be afraid. No embarrassing questions, just personal questions. So, at the forum, we have our guests share personal stories so that we inform, inspire, and motivate. So I'm just going to work here from the top of my box here and circle back around with Sophia. Miranda, how did you start in the industry? What was your path to Duke Energy?
Absolutely. So graduated from the University of South Florida with a public relations degree. And so I always really knew I wanted to work with the public in some capacity. So that was sort of my number one. Worked for a nonprofit, a state college, and then a city. And I think all great experience, but I think the city was such great experience. Prepped me for a lot of the regulations we have to go through, public hearings, city county processes, and then started with Duke Energy about 3 years ago. And I mentioned born and raised in Florida, in Central Florida, and I'm lucky enough to cover kind of my hometown and home counties for my transmission engagement kind of area. And, I was thinking about this, how many of the same people that I have worked with in my 15 years in my professional career, from literally my very first job through every single job to now. I am now working with the same, HOAs, counties, cities, the same people that I've worked with my whole professional career. So I just kind of really always try to remember that, have good relationships, deliver on what you say you're going to do. Really your reputation is so important. And it's a small world, even just city, county, state, and, it's a small world.
Yeah, so that advice to the college student, the lesson there, Miranda, is build relationships everywhere you go. Treat people with respect everywhere you go. You will see them again.
You will see them again.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So, Kacie, what about you? How did you get to Duke?
So I am a military brat, so I kind of grew up in between North Carolina and Germany, kind of back and forth. And I think the lesson in that is adaptability and being able to, get along with people, work with people. But I went to St. Augustine's University, which is a historically Black college in Raleigh, North Carolina. and got a job. I majored in computer information and got a job within Progress Energy right out of school, and went into coding, fixed asset systems, power plants, month-end close, all kinds of financial things, which was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. But I am very much a social person, and I think I really wanted that customer interaction. So I eventually moved into change management,
which I have
and
to
then
tell you,
community
it's
relations.
not
I really enjoyed community relations.
But Kacie, it's almost counterintuitive. So I'm going to be guilty here of stereotyping, right? The technology, the IT with the people part.
No,
it's not intuitive, is it?
That's right. That's so fair. So I think the stereotype is that you prefer to be heads down in your cubicle coding, not talking to people. And for me, that was completely different. I'm like, hey guys, I want to know what you're doing. I want to learn about it. And so I needed to find a place where I could really focus on what I felt was my strength. So I think that's what I would share with the college student is, even though I went to school for this, what are those natural strengths that you can pull out of different things that you've done? I think we call them transferable skills, right?
Yes.
That you can use in different places. And so I feel like those transferable skills have taken me in different directions. And I've been with the company fresh out of college, 15 and a half years now, but in different areas of the company. And so I think not being afraid to learn new things, not being afraid to try new things. And when an opportunity comes available, give it a try and see what you think. And I've been really happy in transmission, being a lot closer to our actual business and learning all kinds of new things. So I've been really grateful for this opportunity.
That's wonderful, Kacie. That's wonderful. I'm hearing a running theme here also. I loved you saying it's adaptability, but it's also making yourself more valuable to the company, but also more marketable for yourself within the company, right? Learning different parts.
Very true.
So
yes.
Sophia, what about you? And you're in North Carolina, Sophia?
I'm actually in Florida.
Okay.
I live in Central Florida as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's located in Florida, but handle the whole enterprise. And but just right from that, my seat here in Florida. I came to the company as a young 20-something. So I wasn't right out of college. Prior to coming to Duke Energy, I worked in tourism in Central Florida. So as a college student, I'll kind of go back to college student. I went to UCF in Orlando back when I remember I started when there was 26,000 students, and now there are 60 plus thousand. And go Knights! Sorry, Miranda. Go Knights!
Go Bulls!
So got my undergrad in marketing and started right out of college with. And when I was in college, I worked for Disney and promotions, and I loved tourism, honestly, because of the relationships. And that's where relationships are so key in that industry. And I was so glad to have that training at such a young age. And then I went to SeaWorld and Busch Gardens after that in marketing and worked with the local hotel market. That was my role. And from there, believe it or not, went into healthcare. So as Miranda kind of said, there's a lot of folks that you still continue to know, and one person led to the other position. You know, these were all positions that they came about because I knew through my tourism background and my relationships, I met somebody in healthcare that was in the same area, and I worked for a large health system in Central Florida in marketing and public relations. And then from there, somebody that I knew in the health system happened to know about a position at Duke Energy that was manager of community relations in Central Florida, and encouraged me to apply. And that's how I got to Duke Energy. At the time, that we were having some reliability issues within Central Florida, and I really saw it as a challenge. You know, how can we translate what we're doing as a company to the public better? And so right from the beginning, and as Kacie has mentioned too, I have moved. I'm probably in my 5th role now. Just celebrated my 20th anniversary last month, and there are a lot of different things you can do. There's a lot of different things you can do in the organization. So I went from community relations to unregulated group in the company, manager over transmission and distribution services. But like Kacie and Miranda have mentioned, transferable skills, took me to that position, then moved into more project management and into transmission. So now this position is kind of a blending of both, my public background, but also my transmission knowledge. So I do think the more things that you can do in the organization, you do become very well-rounded. And it's easy to say, well, I know what those folks in delivery do, or I know what those folks do in that other group. But until you work there, it really helps for you to get that experience and work in those groups.
Absolutely. I'm always amazed at the end of these interviews just how much advice comes out of your company, frankly, and your colleagues in other companies. There's such a passion for what you do. And so the three of you, I've heard flexibility, adaptability, taking risks, leaving yourself open for out of the box, things you had not thought about, but certainly could do. And I bet if I were to ask you, well, let me just ask you, is this what you thought you would be doing when you graduated school? No.
Never.
No.
Probably not.
No. And it's just okay.
It's been awesome.
It's
Yes.
So
Honestly,
did this go ahead, Sophia.
a lot of I didn't even know this existed. And in the future, there will be other jobs and things that we didn't even anticipate today.
Right.
But I would say what we do in working with the public, the relationship-based positions, those are hard to get a computer to do those.
Right.
And so these are really difficult to try to make technology take over. And I don't think, as much as technology is advancing and all of us, love it, and we can do so many new things, the relationships, and as we found over the pandemic, that'll never go away. We really still want to connect with people.
Right.
We want to connect in person. We want to connect via video. So we still want to connect with folks. And the more, that we can connect with the public and what we do in our roles, we live in our communities. Like Miranda said, she handles the community that she lives in. So we take it very personally and seriously.
Yeah. And the technology doesn't build trust. It's only the personal relationship that builds trust. Well, ladies, what do you think? Did that hurt? Any of that hurt?
Not at all.
No, it was fun, right? It was fun.
Great. Yeah.
Will you come back and talk about those EJ principles? We're going to announce them here, right? All right.
Absolutely.
So you get the last word. What's the single piece of advice you want the second year college law student to know about pursuing a career in energy? How do they start, Miranda?
One word?
Well, it could be a sentence.
I just keep going back to relationships and just your reputation and just maintaining that through every single step, from school, personal, professional, just maintaining that all the time.
Thank you, Miranda. Kacie, what do you think? Pursue technology and then go into public engagement, right?
That's right. Do whatever you want to do. No, I would say always be willing to be a student of the business that you're in. Even if it's not a project that you're working directly on, understand how the work that you do connects to the larger company mission and how that's important to serve your customers. So whatever you're doing, know how your piece of the puzzle piece fits the bigger picture. That's the advice that I would leave.
That's
great advice.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Sophia.
I would say the future is in energy. So if folks are looking at, what's going to be popular in the future, energy. You hear our goals of being net zero by 2050 in our organization. A lot of organizations have that goal, and the way they're going to do that is through the energy system and the energy grid. So it's a great field to be in a lot of diversity. You see it in our group. We haven't even talked about the other folks that we work around that are very diverse backgrounds. So it's a great area to get into if you haven't thought about it. Absolutely. From college.
Well, ladies, thank you for being with us today. Want to thank Duke for sponsoring today's episode. Want to also remind everyone about the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum. The annual live forum, October 27th through the 29th, will be in Orlando this year. And ladies, I hope the three of you will join us. And I know Duke is a title sponsor this year. Really appreciate your unwavering support of women in energy. Appreciate you. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila.
Thank you, Lila. Good to see you, ladies.